Right. So just nice and comfortable as you sit, and feet below your knees. Sitting up, slightly angled forward, or just resting against your lower back against the back of the chair. Rubbing your hands together. And then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Over one shoulder and your arm. The other side. And then upper part of your chest. Your belly. The legs. Okay, sit back. Remind yourself of this feeling of allowing yourself to drop into the chair, of letting go, however you describe it to yourself. Knees slightly bent, your weight back in your hips and buttocks, and in whatever part of your back is resting against the back of the chair. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. Just feel yourself beginning to quieten down, both in mind and body. The body just enjoying the opportunity to release some of the tightness, some of the stiffness. Remember, you're not trying to hold any particular position. The attention you pay to your body, the focusing of your attention, just drawing your thoughts in, gathering your thoughts in a little bit. And then when you come to the upright position, same thing. Obviously physically slightly different because that draining away, that letting go process is now automatically straight down. About a third of your weight in your feet, so your head not quite over the middle, but if you imagine a square with your feet at the front two corners, your hips at the rear two corners, you're just a little bit forwards in that, so a slight angle with your upper body. If I sit like this, my shoulders above my hips, which is what I would do, and I would have if I was standing. I feel as I'm right on the edge. It's like, like I'm sitting right on the edge of the chair. Whereas if I'm here, then it's more comfortable. So I just let my pelvis tilt forward very, very slightly. So there's physically an angle through my body, but from a point of view of alignment, if I take a point from the crown of my head, I've still got a straight line going down there. And that's the reference point for all of the movements. And that should allow the feeling of letting go, releasing through your body. And again, hips, buttocks, lower back, absorbing the weight and allowing it to flow down through the chair, and some of it, about a third of it, down through your legs. And then just slowly turning your head. And then your shoulders. going forwards. Hands down to your sides. Imagine the round pillar or ball beside you, and rotating your arms. You're still rotating your arm, but bring your hands up. And thinking of that you're winding up your ball of wool or something like that. And then back the other way. And then now when you tilt forward, more of your weight goes into your feet, maybe as much as 60%, whatever feels comfortable, and then back. Don't let your head go further forward than your knees. You might not get that far, but you don't want to be right out there. So you're moving, keeping your center of gravity within this square that I talked about earlier. So even though you're moving and angling a little bit more, you should feel well supported by your feet and hips. And then turn a little. And back in the other direction. And go to that. And back the other way. Come back to 60% of your weight, 2/3 of your weight back in your hips, and then just taking some careful steps out. Just put down, same thing on the other side. Let your hands drop down. rotate so that they're forwards again. Now this time combining the rotation with the transfer of your weight. Bird folds its wings. So just try and be aware of the various elements of the movement that build up to move your arms. Your weight moving forwards and backwards, of course. Feeling as you go back and the hands turn forward, that your chest, your rib cage opens. Upper back, it's like the shoulder blades slide towards each other, and that reverses as you go forwards. One more time. And then fisherman cast a net. So now, same movements really. You're not doing the rotation in your arms, but your weight is still moving, of course. And when I go forwards, notice you get that opening of the chest, and as you settle into your front feet, it's like your sternum withdraws, your hand starts to swing through, and then you're going back, and that pulls your hand back. Now here, as the hand goes back, again, shoulder blades drawn in towards each other. You can see, I'm exaggerating these movements, but you can perhaps see that little bit of movement there. I'm already drawing my arm forwards. I can't do the other arm because of the back of the chair. So there's a great deal going on here, well, perhaps especially in these very simple movements. And if we keep reminding ourselves of that, I know I've pointed this out to you all many times, but coming back to it again and again and again reinforces your awareness of the movement, reinforces the actual movement. And what you'll start to find is you find these movements, these little changes in all sorts of movements, not just in Tai Chi, but just in your everyday life. Now imagine the ball behind your arms, just sitting back, drawing the ball in towards your chest and down. Again. One more time. So as you come back this time, again, chest opening, a little bit more, pigeon spreads its wings. In fact, not just the chest from here, because your hands are down there, and as you come up, you'll expansion your belly, your solar plexus, and then your chest. A pattern of movement that mirrors what we would regard as good breathing practice in Tai Chi, which is to breathe as though your lungs were down in your belly. In other words, if you breathe in here, then the expansion begins in your belly, rises through the solar plexus and comes in to the upper part of your chest, and then forwards again. So it might be an exercise which you find useful to play with the breath a little bit. And what I would suggest if you want to do that is, as you come back, just see how it feels to take the breath in. If it's comfortable, that's great. If it's not, don't worry about it. And just do that maybe once or twice every now and then. And gradually you'll find that your breathing and movement will just naturally blend. Now pushing away. One more time. Hands lower down, just on the rotation, quite strong into your shoulders, then chest opening and then closing as you go forwards. Don't bring your hands back too far, so don't bring your elbows behind your shoulders. And again, just to illustrate what I was talking about with the chest, when you get to here, it's like this has happened. Again, this is wildly exaggerated. And then if I'm here and I draw my sternum back, can you see how that action, again, very exaggerated, don't do it like this, but if we can get that feeling in the body without actually having to do such big movements, then again, that feeds into the exercise. And then bring your hands out. Okay, turning your hands palm down, polishing the table, turning your hips, sinking back, swing around. Imagine somebody sitting behind you. You just grab hold of your belt by your spine. First of all, they pull you to one side, so they pull this way, and that brings your hand around. Then they pull your hips back, and your body sort of folds forwards, but still very much your weight bearing down through that little part of the square. Now that your hips are going back and sending your hands forwards helps to counter the effect that pushing your hands forwards like this, if that's what you were doing, might well overbalance you and pull you out of the chair. One more to each side. Now, turning your hands palm up, pressing down to both feet and hips at the same time. Just an upward movement, lifting the ball and pressing down. Try and feel that your spine, which would probably be the main part of your body to first receive the effect of the push up, just lengthen slightly here and then contract. Same thing as now as we go into the wild goose. So from here, hands come out, fingers pointing away. And it tend to be your elbows that move first. Back, and the tips disappearing. The image of the bird in flight, perhaps making a contribution to the overall feel of the movement. And then ease forwards just a little bit, enough to let your hands pass in front of your knees. Sit back as your hands cross. Push up, again, your back expanding like a wave coming up underneath your arms. Heart in the clouds. Now, letting your hands drop down with the weight of your arms hanging from your shoulders. And with the next expansion, just one side, elbow first, and then drawing your fingers up. Dragon plucks the stars from the sky. On the other side. So take your time when you make the change over from left to right, from right to left. Do one more. And then both hands together. Pushing up and then pushing out. Nice, steady, even pace. If you wish, if it's comfortable, you can add a turn in from your hips. And the other way. Feeling the control of the movement from the center of your body and facing forwards and push out. Again. Facing the front for the final push out, and as you do that, extend one foot, heel on the floor, knee a little bit bent, scooping the sea and looking at the sky. Come back. And if your back's feeling okay, you might just get a little bit of a sense of opening up backwards. So go down. As we come back, we reach that position, that neutral position that we had before. But if this is comfortable, notice I do that, so I end up a lot more open there. But the problem there is that from this position, it's quite difficult to come to the upright. You end up straining. So you have to sort of give a little bit in your belly and just let your body curve into position. And then grasping the tiger's ears, you sit back, wide for that. Now switch sides, bring that foot in, step out with the other one. Same thing, first of all, scooping the sea, looking at the sky. And grasping the tiger's ears. Don't grip your fingers tightly. It should be a hollow fist. You better get another finger down through the middle quite comfortably. And small. And come back to the central position. So we can move the weight forward and backwards fairly simply. We can move the weight a little bit from side to side here, but it's quite difficult to maintain the upright posture, but it can still be done. We can move the weight into one leg or the other leg, the majority of the weight on me. And we can even move the weight more into one hip and another. And you can imagine a line from, say, your left hip diagonally forwards to the right leg. And as you move along that line, notice how my center's turning. And try that on the other side, so from your right hip to your left foot. Now, think of a pattern that starts off, to start off saying your right hip, you go diagonally into your left leg, and you come back, notice this turning in your center. Then you move across like there's a line at the bottom of an X. So you go into your left hip and forwards into your right leg, and back. This is the weight change pattern for the movement, the seated version of Parting the Wild Horse's Mane. One diagonal, move across, and then the other diagonal, holding your hands out in front of you. Imagine you're carrying the tray of drinks. Some kind of operation that requires your hands to maintain a fairly steady, still quality. Okay, now this time, come across into your left hip, turn slightly, and then as you go forward, it's like you're pushing into something with your shoulder for the first few moments. You gradually turn and reach out a little bit with your hand. come back, leaving your hand in position so your arm is drawn across your chest, and you turn both hands palm in. You're now holding the ball. You carry that ball over into your right, turn a little towards your right, and then repeat the whole process. Reaching out, top hand pressing down towards the point just in front of the right hip, coming back, hold the ball. This is parting the wild horse's mane. Things with these slightly more complicated exercises is to take them move by move, step by step. Do one more on each side now. Good, and then just I'm planning to highlight certain film that I put up on YouTube and probably start a separate channel which will provide hopefully a more accessible way of finding film for specific exercises like this one. I mean, there is film up there, but it was a couple of years ago that it got put up. So look out in the future with the emails for reference to what I think will be a second YouTube channel. I don't know whether I can do that or not. I have to see what YouTube do. But I can do it will be a kind of reference channel. So things like parting the wild horse's mane and some of the more tricky exercises, the step in and the stance work and things like that will be spotlighted in that. For those of you who like to use the films up there as reference points. Okay, so just come back and sit again for a few moments. Remind yourself of this quality in the basic stance, the spacious quality within your body. And we do bear prayer as well. So just place your hands in front of your shoulders and go back to this exercise that we did earlier. Now this time, try and use, again, I'm exaggerating, I don't know if you can see, but my head goes down, excuse me, my head goes up. I'm pushing from my hips to raise the elbows and then dropping down, pushing up and dropping down. A nice rolling, smooth movement in our shoulders, and of course a lot of movement in chest and upper back. And then what we're going to do is turn. So turn to your left, to how that brings your right elbow over, and then turn to your right. So you push up, turn very carefully, and drop down. Push up, and turn, and drop down. And this time, as you turn to your left, and your right elbow comes forwards, go into your right leg. Again, I'm exaggerating a little bit. So you come back, push up, and then drop forwards into your leg. See if you can get a bit of movement in your hips and lower back. Very carefully. And then to complete the movement, all you have to do is turn your hand palm out, and as you go through, let it press down more or less above your knee. Bear play. Maybe a little bit outside of the knee, but maybe not. And there's not the image of the bear prowling through the woods. It's a great exercise for your back when you can get this moving. Very much moving from your hips, letting your shoulders follow. Feeling that lovely smooth wave-like movement through your spine. So the bear is a powerful animal, we know, but also one that has quite a soft side to it. You know, teddy bears when we're younger, don't we? So, And it's an interesting combination. It's quite akin, I think, to Tai Chi. Do one more on each side. And then just let your arms rest. Take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. That's bear play. You're getting 2/3 of your weight back in your hips, a third in your feet. And then just rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Your arm. The other side. Up to the chest again. The lights on your belly. Coming out a little bit stronger on your legs, hips. Good. And then just working your legs a little bit, pushing down through the ball of your foot so your heel comes up. Just be smooth, same sort of quality of movement we would look for in everything else. So a smooth movement through your legs. And then keeping your heel up to start to go around in the circle with your knee. Not too big a circle. So the movement going right back into your hip joint on that side. And then on the other side, push up and down. And around. So these movements should just help to wake your legs up a little bit before you stand up. So, you want to stand? Stand now. As always, you can use your chair for support. I won't, so I can move around. It gets in the way, but it's not a bad idea to do that. And if there's something that you're trying to do, best to start off, make it as easy for yourself as possible. Nothing wrong with doing that. So if you're trying to take a slow step and you're wobbling around all the time, you can't really think about what you're trying to do. And in Tai Chi, we always try and apply that attention. So standing next to a wall, for instance, could help you. Just think, oh yeah, this is what's happening, holding on to the chair, something like that. It's a useful way to practice. So feet parallel, hip width apart. And the ideal posture, and this is a classic example really, where I think having some support can help, because what we want to do is to have our weight forwards. I've exaggerated this, by the way, I'm further forward than I need to, but you see, when I bring my weight to a point just behind the ball of each foot, I am slightly angled. Now, that can be a bit uncomfortable. because you're gradually being pulled forwards. And inevitably you're going to strain, which is the opposite of what we want to do. But it's quite instinctive. You think, oh, I can't let myself fall. We have two other responses to this. A very common one is to do this, to pull the shoulders back. So it's like, well, our bodies want to be upright. Now, this is obviously bad posture. You can see the curve in my back and so on and so forth. It's tight in my back, tight in my chest and my belly. Nothing is right. Another common response, or another natural response, but not always as common, is to just let your hips drop back. So if I'm here and I let my hips drop back, look what happens. I go from this to this. I get that feeling of my center of gravity dropping, lower back, hips, pelvis, buttocks, kind of overhanging and dropping down. And moreover, I've actually, without having to strain in my shoulders, I've brought myself to the upright position. So if you can do that, that's good. But of course, it means you have to relax a little bit in your hips and your back and your shoulders if you're angling forwards. And that's where it becomes difficult, because if you think you're going to fall, you're not going to be able to relax. So you hold on to something for a bit of security, and that enables you to play around with these things till such time as you start to feel comfortable. I can say till the cows come home, this is a better way of maintaining your stability, letting the hips sink back, letting the center of gravity drop. But the words are meaningless without your experience. It's just words. You've got to be able to feel it in your body to really get that confidence. And yeah, using the support to help you is a good idea. Now let your hips drop down and back a little bit more. Bring your hands around and pushing up. And expanding and contracting. We can really feel in the standing movements how our hips, our legs are used, move the upper body. They're the primary generators of the movement, of the energy. So they're the primary cause, if you like to think of it like that, or origin of the flow of the movement. All the time we feel comfortable, then our upper body stays fairly spacious, fairly open, and the movement can flow more easily. Now, changing the wild goose. A little bit more difficult to maintain the softness in your shoulders with your arms out to the sides like this. And then parting the clouds, pushing your arms up. They may get a little bit above your head, but not too far. Keep your hands in front of your body. So it's very tempting to get to here and then do something like this. But again, that's going to push you back. We do it sometimes if you're putting something on a shelf or something. It's a strange practice. We think we're getting more height like that, but in fact, we're just taking more risk, I think. Yeah. Good. Okay, and then just shake out. When we get to the step in, and this is something that is good to practice in the chair, and good to practice something with support. What you have to think is our normal way of walking, and it's a good way of walking, there's nothing wrong with it, is to actually angle forwards a little bit. And you can see that what's happening there is I'm starting effectively to fall. And what happens is we do this, we let the legs swing through. And of course, we're using our arms and so on and so forth. So we stroll down the shops, marching away, and it's fine. What we're trying to do in Tai Chi is not emulate that and just do it slowly. We're looking at the walking from a different perspective. And so what we want to think in terms of is, doesn't matter which foot you try this on, it's just watch. I'm going to hold on to something because I'm talking at the same time. So here, my weight's on my right leg, but most of my body is concerned with maintaining my structure. What I do is I'm exaggerating. I draw my knee up and I'm using these muscles around this part of the body, around the hip on that side. Everything else is staying quiet and just helping the stability of the structure. So I bring my foot up and then I just extend the leg from my hip. I don't reach out or anything like that. It's as though I'm pushing a stick down into the ground. I put my heel down and I lower my toes. Notice that my knee's still a little bit bent. And then if possible, I just press in gently and then move the weight. Same thing with the back leg here. I let the knee come forward, the leg contracts and expands. It's the ball of the foot goes down first when I step backwards. Front foot again, contracting in, expanding out. Contracting in, expanding out. When we do it in the exercise, we do it like this, we do it much smaller. But again, if you hold on to something, then you can practice that movement and get an idea of where it comes from. We also do that in the chair, of course. So this actually helps you to understand some of the mechanisms of the stepping. And then just have 1 foot forwards and transferring your weight. Try and be very aware of that pull down through your hips. That's really one of the key things that helps you to maintain that upright position. But also it's one of the key things, recognizing that and yielding to that, relaxing with that to allow your hips to be brought down. If you do go to stumble, this isn't going to do you much good for too long. But if you can do this, that's it. I fell backwards. I didn't mean to do that. But watch again. I'll exaggerate. I'm here. I'm about to fall. If I can relax here and just let my hips go back, that happens, and I get drawn back. In fact, if anything, a little bit too far. But that was all very exaggerated. So, in your kind of normal everyday walking, when we're invited to sort of angle forward slightly, and the shoulders go a little bit forwards, we still want to feel that the hips are going back, and that means that we can get the advantage of the momentum, but the hips are ready to stop us if we need to. It's like if you drive a car, you know where the brake pedal is. Sometimes you hover over the brake pedal. If you ride a bike, same thing. Sometimes you're ready. So that feeling of your hips dropping back is there waiting for you to make use of it if you need it. So going into your back foot, hips dropping down, and your toes raising. Turn the front foot out a little bit, and let the heel come up. So if you think about exercises like scooping the sea and looking at the sky and polishing the table, we've got, when we do that, whether seated or standing, we get a very strong feeling of the hips dropping back whilst the upper body is angling forwards. And so there's a bit of a kind of balancing quality, a neutralizing quality that begins to build for us. And if we keep practicing like that, then we will eventually find ourselves able to maintain stability much more effectively. and then stepping in. So again, all of these things can be practiced in the chair, but put to the test in the standing. And because you're putting something to the test, then at least some of the time, again, be prepared to be next to the wall. So if you go forward and it's a bit like that, rather than stiffen up, take hold of the wall and think, well, what happens if I can do this? Can I just drop my hips down? And that's obviously going to be a useful thing in your daily life and shake out. Remember that if you do wander around the house or you pop down the road and you stumble slightly, it doesn't have to look good. Yet you just want to remain upright. It doesn't have to be graceful or fluid or anything like that. It's still good. You stop yourself falling. That's what's important. So if you do exaggerate something, and you think, well, this doesn't feel very Tai Chi, it's okay. We learn to do this in Tai Chi, but the application of these ideas is a little different. Now try that on the other side. So we're trying to breed a habit. We're trying to breed the habit of allowing the hips to yield rather than stiffening up in our shoulders. The opposite of what we've often been taught. So the old habit isn't just going to go away, but by focusing on the new habit and by keeping repeating that, then we gradually build that. So raising your toes and your heel. So your awareness of all of this is very much a key element. But you want to get to a point where you don't have to think about it, where it's quite intuitive. And then stepping in. Okay, so I can feel myself wobbling around there, and I'm just going to let myself drop down a little bit. Not always easy to do. But I've learned over the years that this is a better thing to do. I have fallen over a few times in the process of learning that, which isn't always desirable. But again, that's why I suggest using the chair for support to play with these ideas. And then step through. The other thing, of course, is in normal walking, we wouldn't be going this slowly. So the momentum would actually help to carry us over little bumps and things like that sometimes. And then going back. Yeah. So we run out of time, but here, if I you get taught walking practice in fitness stuff and things like that, and it's good. What they would teach you sometimes is you angle forward slightly. See, when I do this, what happens? It's a good, efficient way of walking. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. What I'm saying is that as we do that, we also want to feel the suggestion of that pull there. So I can actually stand like this reasonably comfortably because any tendency to be pulled forwards is still neutralized by that feeling of my hips dropping back. And if I did stumble, you see, I actually did it without thinking about it. Straight away, my hips will go back. In physiotherapy, they have something that they call the sway envelope, which is where, and it's something that they've learned from Tai Chi and adapted from Tai Chi, where if we sway forwards, or maybe our arms go forwards like this, and then eventually we have to take a step. So how far can you sway before you're forced to take a step? And I was doing a training course in this, led by a fitness person, so all sorts of instructors there, and we were doing a little experiment together. Somebody would take hold of your arm and draw the arm out, and you'd wait, and then eventually you'd take a step. It was quite interesting. But the woman I was working with, unfortunately, I wasn't doing it deliberately. She got annoyed with me. She threw my arm down and told me I was cheating. Because apparently, as she did this, and again, I wasn't doing it deliberately, as my body started to go forward, I instinctively did this. And she said, "You're bending your knees. You're not supposed to." Sorry, but just and I wasn't trying to be funny. I was quite pleased in a way that, you know, my body, without me having to instruct it, was actually doing what was the right thing to do from its point of view in those circumstances, which is to stop myself falling. So go back to your chairs, and in the seated posture, once again, the same thing. If I just lean forward, eventually I'm going to flop out of the chair. But that movement of my weight forwards from this could be a strain on my body. But if I can, I'll exaggerate. If I'm maybe you can see I'm quite tight in my back. But if I can do this, yeah, you can just about see it. Again, I'm very exaggerated. If I let my hips drop back, that keeps my weight a little bit forwards, but it just settles me down into the chair a little bit. So it's a very subtle feeling, and it comes from the awareness of the weight moving through our hips and the willingness to yield to that. And of course, in a chair, that's going to be much easier. So that feeling of sinking down is the one when we do this, the same feeling of the hips sinking backwards into the chair. We're trying to do it from a much more upright position. Okay, so let your hands drop down to your sides and embrace tiger, return to mountain. So for this one, you push down through your feet and your hips to push your arms up. But as your hands come up, once again, really feel your hips sinking down. So it's almost as though at the same time as you extend upwards and outwards, there's a near automatic response in your hips, your center of gravity to sink down. The more your arms extend out, the lower you want your center of gravity to be. Like a tree with its roots, the more the branches spread out, the more we need the roots to be deep and widespread. And rest. Right, open your eyes. Thank you very much, everybody. Sorry we didn't get around to doing more standing variety, but I thought it'd be useful just to look at that stepping again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.